Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, and welcome to the Government Operations Committee for the Government Athens-Clarke County. I'd like to welcome to this meeting Ms. Mocha Johnson and Mr. Shane Sims, who will be making a presentation from the Police Advisory Task Force that Mayor Gertz put together, I guess a few months ago now. So we've been anticipating these recommendations, and Mayor Gertz assigned this to Government Ops so that we can take a look at them and make some full recommendations based on your recommendations to the full Mayor and Commission. Josh, would you mind putting the agenda up so we can take a look at that real quick and get us started so we just know we're all on the same page here? So we'll have this meeting going from 5 to 6. And first line item of business is, if I could, from the members of the committee, get a motion to approve the minutes from the January 21st meeting.
All motion.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Link, Commissioner Benson, you care to second that one?
I'll second.
Thank you, sir. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thanks guys. So the next item of business will be a review of the recommendations of the Community Police Advisory Board Development Task Force. And this is something Ms. Johnson and Mr. Sims led the effort on, and they do have a presentation for us, about 20-minute presentation. So what we'll do is spend about 20 minutes with that presentation, and after that we'll have, if the board members have some questions related to those, then we'll do that, and then we'll move on to the board discussion. And we also have with us Chief Spruill as well. So we'll probably hear from him also. So, okay, well, at this time, I will turn it over to Ms. Sims and Ms. Johnson. Thank you both for your work and your effort that you put into the task force, and look forward to hearing what you have to say here.
Commissioner Hamby, sorry to interrupt. You want me to put the, just real quick, to put the 7 questions up on the screen?
I did. Thank you for reminding me.
Sorry to interrupt y'all.
No worries. And these were questions that are also in the task force. These questions are the charge that the mayor put for. Of course.
Commissioner Hamby, can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Sure.
We're getting an awful lot of feedback and noise. We can barely hear you. I think we may want to remind everybody who's not talking to mute.
That's a good idea, Chief. Thank you. Yeah, I was hearing some sort of static. So I'll be quick with this. So I'll mute myself here in just a minute. But so this was the mayor's charge for the task force. So we want to make sure we see what are the community benefits of an advisory board, how the advisory board can provide guidance with the relations and the budget review and input, how an advisory board can help our police department and the community provide responses to specific challenging or episodes. And what would this advisory board look like? What would be the composition, the size, background, and so forth, so that we get a good cross diverse community advisory board. And of course, training and knowledge would be essential for an advisory board such as this. So what would that entail? What level of information is necessary for an advisory board to function, and certainly what level of staffing and budget is necessary for an advisory board. So these were the 7 questions that the mayor charged the task force with, and we'll go through and see how these were answered, and go from there. And I see Manager Williams has joined us, so thank you, Manager Williams, and Commissioner Edwards has joined us as well. So thanks for being here, y'all. Oh, okay, Mr. Sims and Ms. Johnson, we'll turn it over to y'all for about 20 minutes here, if you could. So.
Okay, well, let me go ahead and share my screen if I can with the presentation. Just go through that quickly. All right, so well, thank you all for joining us today. For the past several months, as you know, we have been tasked with coming up with recommendations. We've met weekly, and we are quite honored to be here today to be able to share these recommendations with you guys. So one of the first things that we wanted to go ahead and point out is the history of how we got here. The reason why is because when we put out some of the surveys, people that just became aware of that we were doing this was like, why is a civilian oversight board needed? Why is this important? What is going on? So just to give a little context and backstory, in 2018, various local advocacy groups became vocal about the misuse of police force, ICE raids, and the rising rates of Black and brown men being incarcerated within our community. Due to a few incidents between Athens-Clarke County police officers and community members, Athens made national news, and local organizers held a few town halls. One of them included when the ACC police officer forcibly restrained a 10-year-old distraught over his father's arrest. This town hall, Shane and I was also a part of that town hall, and we realized how much the trust was broken in the community. And we wanted to continue to figure out ways on how to repair that trust and how to reduce any type of incidents happening with police officers. Additional events also raised concerns were the 6 shootings in the summer of 2019, and most recently when the tear gassing incident happened in downtown Athens. That also raised a lot of concerns, and it caused division within our community. Many of us know that there's other incidents that happen throughout the community, and this Civilian Oversight Board would help to improve the relation between the community and police officers, improve trust and transparency, reduce police misconduct or abuse, and be proactive as opposed to be reactive. So we are working towards being proactive as opposed to being reactive. Now, as Commissioner Hamby mentioned, he already went over the task force roles and responsibility. So now I would like to just reiterate what a Civilian Oversight Board is. So a Civilian Oversight Board provides the opportunity for an independent body to review the work of law enforcement agency, thus offering an element of legitimacy and internal accountability, and review mechanisms often cannot. Because a civilian oversight agency operates outside of the overseeing law enforcement agency and reports to local stakeholders outside of its chain of command, the findings and reports of an oversight agency are free from the real or perceived biases that are often the source of mistrust in a law enforcement agency's internal system. The benefits will include proactive protecting civil rights, greater accountability, help manage risk, building bridges, support effective policing, increase public confidence. So those are the things that we're hoping that the community will get out of it, amongst many other things. So we had experts from NACO, which is also on the line today, Leanna and Cami. And so with their guidance, and because they have done this work before, they've showed us different models that currently existed. So I know this is small text, but just to go over it real quickly, we have 3 options that we were going to choose from as far as models that we believe that would be beneficial to Athens-Clarke County. So one of the options that we had was an investigative model, a review-focused model, and an auditor-monitor-focused model. So now I'm going to let Shane take over from here and kind of discuss the recommendations. This was the best model for Athens-Clarke County. And I'll do the slide if you want me to, Shane.
Okay, Madam Chair. I think with you unmuted, it gives some feedback. So I'll just give you a thumbs up when we go to the next slide. If you want to mute your microphone.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. We ran into no small number of problems and obstacles in trying to get this job done. It was a challenge for Mocha and I. And one of the things that we realized is that the benefit that anyone would see or not see from this board. It was more about what perspective they brought to the table. And so I would like to refer back to a previous slide in getting ready to discuss the recommendations as well as the benefit. Is that one of the things that the slide said is that mutual trust and respect is necessary, absolutely essential for effective policing. And distrust, it impedes the law enforcement ability to control crime. And I think this is something that we all can agree on. So as we quickly go through these, I want it to be in everyone's mind, all the mayor, commission, and all of those that are on this call, is that every bit of this is intended to build mutual trust and to remedy the distrust that is obvious between the community and police department. We decided on, as a board, we decided on a hybrid model based off the feedback that we also got from the community. And the hybrid model is an auditor-focused and review board structure. So it's an auditor review model. And through extensive research and deliberation conducted over several months, in other words, us meeting, talking, going back and forth with the community, we decided that this would be the best model for Athens-Clarke County. And we get down to the benefits of it. And for the sake of time, I would try to breeze through these, but there were some points that I thought was necessary to be made. First, we chose this model because it has a more robust reporting practices than other models. And here we think that it's essential to kind of replace verbiage sometimes. More robust reporting practice simply means it has a greater capacity to communicate. And I think we all agree that greater communication is definitely needed. It may promote long-term systemic change in police departments. And of course, this systemic change that it may promote is systemic change that is needed. There is a great culture here in Athens-Clarke County, and we hope to shore up that culture. The systemic change only address those things that I think we as a community can agree there need to be some changes with. It tends to be less expensive. Of course, we tried to find the most economical model, although it is a little bit more expensive than a review-focused model. So we tried to find the middle course here. Allow agencies to actively engage in many or all steps of the complaint process. And I think this is where the language kind of get misconstrued. Actively engage kind of feels like shadowing or duplicating the work done by the police department. But what we're looking at here is to lend credibility to a process that usually comes up with a fair conclusion. And what we found that through a study of these boards across the country is that more often than not, the board comes to a conclusion that was the exact same as the police department. Now, what this does is a civilian oversight board, it lends credibility to that decision, and it cuts through a lot of the back and forth, a lot of the distrust, and it goes to say, well, the community had some buy-in in this decision, that the community had someone there to validate the process as it is, and also, as we will see as we go down on these bullet points, that it is established to address any inadequacy. Nothing is perfect. There's no perfect system. And the oversight board is simply there to say, well, okay, this seems to be a stumbling block for us for community police relations trust. How about taking a look at this policy? How about taking a look at this practice and going back and forth in a dialogue, not just telling the police department what to do, but having a discourse or a dialogue about what could be made better. And what happens in that process is even if things stay the same, people feel that their interest was taken into consideration. Having a part of the process goes a long way to building trust between the police department and community. Remember that the purpose is to build on trust and to remedy distrust. And going down to the monitor disciplinary process in order to ensure fairness, consistency, and that is conducted according to the department disciplinary protocol. And again, when we speak about disciplinary process, that's only in the case that some wrong has been done. I think we all agree that when a wrong has been done, then whatever disciplinary process is, it needs to be fair and consistent. So I think that all communities, institutions will be in agreement that this should be done. And it emerged as a result of political compromise. So this is not just a one-off. This is a tried and tested approach to improving community relations. And the model that we've used, it emerged as a result of compromises, not dictatorship, not demands, but as a result of compromise. The auditor-focused model would be able to, auditor would be able to take in complaints and classify those complaints. And what this does is says that, okay, that a citizen, a fellow citizen will take your complaint versus someone in uniform, which naturally is going to meet with some distrust. And the auditor will be able to make recommendations regarding aspects of law enforcement agency. Okay, the recommendation is simply that, hey, how about this right here? This seemed to be a stumbling block between the police department and community. Can we address or remedy this issue here? And last, which is to me is the most important, community engagement. The auditor is now, they have the authority to engage the community and say, hey, this is a fair process, or this process was problematic. However, the police department was willing to engage with us and to come up with a better solution, a better way of doing things. Okay, a benefit of review board focus model, and I won't go through all of these. Review board is exactly as it indicates. It can review the decisions made by the police department. This is more heavily leaning towards community reconciliation and communication. If we look down at the last three bullet points, the review board will be able to hold public forums, conduct community outreach conducted by staff and review board members, and hold meetings in public in accordance with state laws and union contracts. And for me, this is the most important aspect of a review board, is that community engagement, that transparency. I myself, as a civilian chaplain for the Athens-Clarke County Police Department, have been in a position of being able to communicate that the conclusion of the police department in a certain investigation was in fact consistent with what had happened. However, because I was a civilian, it was more well received within the community than it coming from the chief at the time. And I was able to engage the community. So the idea is that this process will be magnified through the review board that is staffed by community members, by citizens, and they can lend credibility, or they can even challenge conclusions that may seem to be inconsistent with facts. And the rest of the bullet points, I think, is not necessarily redundant, but I think that the mayor and commission would be able to read over these bullet points and any interested citizen and understand what's indicated by them. COB authority, in a nutshell, what the Civilian Oversight Board will be able to do is accept complaints. So there is a citizen that's accepting a complaint from a citizen, monitor the investigative process, again, not to oversee, but to lend credibility to the entire process. And being that we assume that the process is one of integrity, then this would do nothing more than be a voice on behalf of that process to the community, a voice that's trusted by the community. And lastly, review completed investigation conducted by Athens-Clarke County Police Department, Office of Professional Standard Divisions. In addition to have the ability to submit policy training recommendation following the outcome investigation, I think we all can probably share the view that more training is sometimes necessary and definitely beneficial. Now, legitimacy of this board is that we found that was an absolute concern. What would be the reporting mechanism of the auditor monitor? And we have recommended that the position be created within the municipal charter rather than by ordinance. And of course, this is completely up to the Mayor and Commission to decide, what's more practical in this sense. And this is with respect to the auditor position. And if this is not possible, we ask that there be a circular report, a circular accountability with this. And as it indicates in the second paragraph, where the COB, the board, is able to bring any issues directly to the mayor and the commission if it's not resolved by the city manager. And again, and according to the last paragraph indicated, is that in order to avoid any potential conflict of interest between the manager, the police department, and the recommendation from the auditor, and speaking about the auditor position, the auditor may present unresolved issues or concern to the board, and the board may take them forward to the mayor and commission. And so this just creates transparency and different levels of accountability. And again, this is all about building trust and remedying the distrust between the police department and the community. All right, thank you, Boca.
Mocha, you're still muted. If you want to unmute, please.
Thank you, Josh.
All right, I'm sorry about that. I didn't even know I muted myself. But anyways, so there's two, we want to be clear. So there's the auditor monitor. That's the person that's going to do the day-to-day duties. And then we have a review board that's going to be made up of citizens from the community, which are going to be selected and appointed by the mayor and commission. So the auditor is going to work with the review board, and therefore it will be a collaborative effort to where the community members from the community is involved, but we also have someone that's professionally handling the day-to-day business. So structure, we recommend for the board to be composed of 11 at-large members and 2 alternatives who closely mirror the diversity and demographics of the community served by the way of including but not limited to age, race, culture, gender, identity, sexual orientation, religion, geographic diversity, and so forth. The main thing that we wanted to get across is that we want this board to be diverse and reflective of the community members, even those that are most vulnerable to policing or victims of crimes as well. We want for the mayor and commission to allow organizations that have worked on these issues, civic organizations, to also be involved in the recommendation process, whether they outreach to them to ask if they know anyone that would want to be a part of the board. So the qualifications, I'm not going to go through it, but too extensively, but it's starting at least 18 years of age and up. The following shall not be eligible to serve as a review board: a current sworn officer, a current city employee, a former department sworn employee, current or former employee, official or representative of an employee association representing sworn police officers, or a person with current or pending criminal charges. And all of those is to avoid conflict of interest. We really want for this entity to be reflective of the community. So, and based on other models that are already out there, that is why we feel that that would be the best thing for us. I will skip over this slide here as far as the appointment of the review board, because you guys, it will be up to the mayor and commission shall establish a well-publicized, fair, transparent, and equitable application process. So we just want for the mayor and commission to make a strong effort to reach out in various ways so that we can find the right auditor-monitor person to take on this position. We also made an emphasis to seek nominations, again, from the organizations, recommendations. Who can this person be? This is going to be a special person that is going to work with building bridges and building our community together. And we want them to be able to relate to various culture and various gender identities as well. So one of the things I'm just going to point out on here, because this was something that we went back and forth on, and some people in the community, even from the survey responses, had pushback on this area, which is stipends. We really believe that the review board members should receive some type of stipend. Now, we included, or I'm not sure if we sent those material over to you, but we did research and found that there was 2 other boards that currently work within Athens-Clarke County, and their board members receive stipends. So we wanted for, I would guess, the Government Operations Committee and the Mayor and Commission to consider making sure that the review board members are receiving some type of stipend while they meet, whether it's weekly, monthly, and taking on this workload, because we don't want for that to be a barrier from people to serve on the board, because of, it takes a lot of time. Shane and I volunteered. We meeting every week, we volunteered our time, but this is something that we want to last for years. So we're hoping that you'll be able to provide stipends for the different review board members. Some of the authorities are pretty much the same that Shane went over earlier, so I'm not going to go over them point by point, but similar to make policy recommendations to enhance current Athens-Clarke County Police Department protocols, make budget recommendations pertaining to the Athens-Clarke County Police Department, conduct community outreach. So similar things. So the auditor, monitor, and the review board is going to work together to ensure that these things are executed. And I know we have limited time, so I don't want to go over every single bullet point. We also recommend that the civilian oversight board members receive training so that they're familiar with the procedures of Athens-Clarke County Police Department. Some of the trainings that we recommend is public record and public meeting laws, confidentiality requirements, the use of force, community outreach, investigation techniques, so that they can be knowledgeable and understand, why the police operates the way that they do, why this protocol was met, what are the procedures, so they have an understanding, they're knowledgeable about the process as well. Staff and a budget, to make it simple, we want to make sure that this department there's budget set aside so that this department could fully function, even to the point where the auditor monitor can have maybe an assistant. They have a budget for marketing, putting the word out in the community, just making sure that the department is properly staffed and the budget is there so that it can last for many years. I will skip over that slide about the auditor and hiring terms and removal unless you guys would like me to go over that. So some of the Auditor Authority, I think Shane might have mentioned some of these before. Again, making policy recommendations to enhance current Athens-Clarke County Police Department protocols. Some of these bullet points, they're redundant. The auditor, monitor, and the review board have some of the same duties, and they're able to make recommendations, and you guys have received this portion, the full extent of what we are recommended previously, so I'm going to skip over this slide as well. Okay, so this is something that also came up that we just want to mention. To avoid conflict of interest, we wanted to make sure that if anything comes up, the auditor monitor have access to outside legal counsel. To avoid conflict of interest, the auditor and the civilian oversight board shall have access to outside counsel as needed on a retainer basis, but not for day-to-day legal advice on the agency's operations. When viable, the agency should utilize the Athens-Clarke County Attorney's Office. So if there's no conflict of interest, of course, we would want for the auditor monitor or the civilian oversight board members, however you guys come out with a final recommendation, to use the city attorney, but to also have option for outside legal counsel. We also talked about making sure there's sufficient budget there, especially dealing with an executive level salary for the auditor position. And there's funding there for technology training, marketing, office space, and also mediation as well. The auditor shall establish a mediation program to help remedy appropriate complaints of conduct. So that is something that we also think is important for that office to have. So how do we measure? How do we make sure that this is successful and it's going to work? Well, they had 13 principles which form the preconditions for an effective civilian oversight of law enforcement. And we wanted to use those effective measures as to make sure that this is successful and that we're hitting our goal. So independence is number one. Clearly defined and adequate jurisdiction and authority, unfettered access to records and facilities, access to law enforcement executives and internal affairs staff, full cooperation, sustained stakeholder support, adequate funding and operational resources, public reporting and transparency, policy and patterns in practice analysis, community outreach, community involvement, confidentiality, anonymity, and protection from retaliation, procedural justice, and legitimacy. So in closing, we also recommend that when you guys are working on the development of the Civilian Oversight Board, for 1 or 2 members from our current task force to be a part of the transitional process to help to streamline the whole process. So whoever are the new members of the review board, that they can help, we can assist with educating and just assisting with being a part of the transitional process, so there's not a disconnection. I think that is pretty much it. You guys already know who the task force members are, and we also have attached the full recommendation, because this is a summary. We also drafted a recommended ordinance based on what we saw in other cities, and 13 principles linked to the summary of the surveys and the desired qualifications for an auditor monitor.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ms. Johnson and Mr. Sims. Certainly, you've given us a lot to think about and a lot to delve into here. And your presentation was good and thorough, and we look forward to discussing this with a lot of thought that you put toward the work that you did. So your time and your effort are very much appreciated in getting this discussion going. And I feel like something good's going to come out of this. So what we'll do now is, if the committee members have any, and Josh, I don't know if you can put this on full screen so we can see everybody that is looking, so that we can call on some of the committee members if they have questions. So what we'll do right now is see if the committee members have any questions for Mr. Sims or Ms. Johnson or any of the NACOL members. So we appreciate y'all being here as well. Thank you for the work that you've done also. Josh, are you able to put up the screen where that screen where it looks like the Brady Bunch, where we can see everybody's?
Yeah, it's up now, so maybe your screen hasn't updated, Commissioner.
Okay, there you go. I've got it on the wrong thing. Okay.
Good to go.
Sorry, it's my bad. Okay, well, I see Commissioner Link's hand is up. If you have a question, that's good. Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah, I was thinking about the training for this board, and I'm wondering if requiring board members to go through the Citizens Police Academy would be adequate training. You know, if the chief could answer that, as well as Mocha and Shane.
Yeah, I've actually gone through the Citizen Police Academy board, and it did me a lot of good, just to gain insight into the internal workings of the police department. And I think that it would do any member of this board a lot of good to know what are the expectations within the police department, as well as what is already established, so that they can be more informed in their work going forward. So I do, and we have discussed this, Ms. Link, and we do believe that this would be a good requirement for them.
And I will just add to that, we believe that any training that's going to help them to be more familiar with the procedures of how the police department operate, we wouldn't be opposed to that. And I think that course is like, it's pretty good, condensed summary of what the police department does, but we believe they would need more training than just that alone.
I would add that the training would go beyond just simple Citizens Police Academy. Someone who's going to be sitting on a board needs to be informed about what laws the police officers are operating under, case-setting precedents, the different types of force options, everything from a firearm to tasers to OC spray. So there's a more in-depth training that would be involved in getting a board prepared to be able to understand the work that they've got to do.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Link. Good question. Okay, Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have just a few questions on the on y'all's recommendations here, and so Mocha and Shane, yeah, if y'all just want to give me, I'm kind of interested in and also Leanna and Cami, also anybody just for the background on why these choices were made is kind of what I was wondering. The focus on wanting to have this embedded in the charter rather than an ordinance. That's definitely a bit of an extraordinary step for creating any kind of board authority or commission. Can y'all explain the reasoning for recommending that?
I guess I wanted Leanne to also chime in because this was something we went back and forth on. But one of the main reasons is because of the independence. It would give this this entity more independence, as opposed to currently, if we don't have it as a charter, the auditor monitor will be an employee of Athens-Clarke County, similar to if they were a chartered officer, but it's more of how the authority system. So they would have to answer, there would be less independence if they are just a regular employee as opposed to a chartered officer. And Leanne, can you please elaborate on that?
I can add a couple of things to what Mocha just said, Commissioner. What we've seen with oversight entities across the country that are created by ordinance, and you well know this, it's easier to undo an ordinance than it is to undo a charter. So there's many oversight agencies across the country that were created by city ordinance, and when a change of sentiment within the community or what have you, they can be done away with very quickly. And there's pushback from the community with respect to, are you creating something that is, solid and can't be undone or can't be, influenced by, whatever, the political will maybe. And I don't say this in any way as an affront to any of you here. I'm just saying how it is perceived in the community with respect to the strength of the model of how you're establishing it. There's been a couple of models, particularly some on the West Coast, that have actually gone to voter initiatives to create them. So we do know, usually the route is just to create it by ordinance, because that's pretty much the easier route, because it doesn't take as much to get it onto a charter, changing your charter. But many of those, oversight entities across the country have actually, once they're created, then go back and ask to be put on the, as a voter initiative to basically solidify their authority and jurisdiction.
Okay, so I guess to the first point about the reporting and the authority, I guess I see another way of us being able to resolve that part that Mocha brought up is possibly housing this as like in the Office of Operational Analysis, rather than having to create a completely new charter position. But to the second concern about the making it easier, making it more difficult to undo, I guess I have a question to Attorney Hines. What is the process of us altering the charter? Does that require us going to the state legislature?
Right, and that's something that we've discussed with the task force, that it almost certainly would require a state legislative act that is highly unlikely to occur in this current political climate. One of the things Leanna was nice enough to share with me is that there's actually a bill out there that would address possible creation of task forces. So that is absolutely a stumbling block. And one of the things we discussed is that if this were to be housed under the Office of Operational Analysis, that there probably would need to be some changes related to the duties of that office, and that may also affect the charter. But I think a lot of that is in the ordinances as well. So we'd have to look at that if that's something that the Mayor Commission wanted to do.
Okay. Commissioner Hamby, I have a few more questions, but I'm happy to let other people go if they have other questions first.
Okay. Seems like the floor is yours, Commissioner Denson.
Okay, sure. Thank you. So some of these are just like a few just technical things. The idea of the alternative members, I guess I wondered about what the reasoning was behind that. I'm assuming just to fill in if there's vacancies or people aren't there. But I guess I have concerns just knowing that it's difficult to recruit people to serve on boards, authorities, and commissions in general. That it'd be very difficult to recruit somebody who would be an alternative and has no guarantee of actually participating. Was that discussed at all?
No, we didn't discuss that. We basically just make that recommendation and leaving that up to the mayor and commission as far as we just didn't want there to be a turnover. One of the members recommended creating a stagnated type of board. So that is why we came up with that type of recommendation to avoid any empty seats. Shane and Leanna, you guys can add to that as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, Commissioner Denson, that we definitely wasn't naive to the challenges that'll be faced in staffing this board. And one of the things that we discussed was different recommendations that we can make to the mayor and the commission on how people should be solicited to join this board. But I think ultimately we dropped that discussion as part of the overall presentation and leave it for the commission. But we did consider those challenges, and I don't think we found the golden grail to how we can staff it fully, much less overstaff it. But that is an idea, an aspiration that we do have for that.
Okay, thank you. And I have two more quick ones. One of the big concerns that I know we've gotten, I'm sure that y'all heard also from outside the community on this, was wanting to have, and specifically from the Chamber of Commerce, was wanting to have a representative from the business community somewhere on that. Was that something that y'all discussed and would be open to making a recommendation, or was that something that individuals were opposed to?
I mean, that was something that we went back and forth on and it wasn't even a real back and forth. And the good thing is that Shane and I, David Bradley, and another gentleman reached out to us, and Shane and I were able to meet with Mr. Bradley and have a good conversation about why we decided to do that structure. And it's just to make sure that it is more representative of the community, of community members. It's not as if they don't have a voice. They can't make a recommendation. It's not opting out the business community, but we don't want this board to end up to be the same stakeholders as it was before. One of the members that was very vocal about it was Stephanie Flores, about how this board is structured and to make sure it's a representation of the people. So Shane, you can also add to that, because he was a part of the conversation that we had with Mr. Bradley. And we realized what some of the fears really was, and this is not what the board can do. So one of the questions I asked him is like, what is the fear? Why does someone from the business community need to be on this board? How does it impact your business or take away from your bottom line, your profit, your dollars? And most of the fear was coming from defunding the police. That's what most of their members were concerned about, in all honesty. And this board is not created to do that, cannot do that. Therefore, there is no need for to appoint somebody from the business community per se to be a part of the review board.
And I agree. And I wouldn't say complaint, but the suggestion from the Chamber of Commerce came in kind of the ninth inning of things. And one of the things that Mocha and I stressed to them was that these were open meetings, and we solicited from all sector of the community. And if an individual came late and did not have as much input into the process as they wanted to, that's something that we can't remedy in hindsight. And also, as Mocha said, that in the crosstalk, and this is partially the task force fault as well. In the crosstalk, comment was made about defunding police. That had nothing. It was not the subject matter, but it came across, and anyone that's looking at it could have easily kind of conflated the ideas and aspirations of this board with defunding the police. But we did try to reiterate over and over again that we have no interest to promote any type of political agenda and to defund the police. We have an entirely separate agenda here. And so we do apologize for that happening. That was something that Madam Chair and I was not able to time. And I think this was some of the backlashes from it.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Denson, were you good on everything so far?
I have one more question, but I'm very happy to let Commissioner Edwards go ahead and go. I can come back with you.
Commissioner Edwards, can we go ahead and wrap up Commissioner Denson and then move on there?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Here, let's go.
Okay. Last question, and I also just wanted to say thank you to all of y'all and everybody who served on this on the commission. I watched a lot of the videos, and y'all did a lot of work. That was hard work, and so I really appreciate these recommendations. I did have concerns, strong concerns with one part, and that was the outside legal counsel for the auditor position. I know, I mean, I'll just be outright, when it came to the Board of Elections, doing that, it caused some pretty serious issues. So I was wondering why y'all thought that outside counsel would be necessary rather than just utilizing the ACC Attorney's Office, which should be, both entities should be representing the best interest of the county. So, yeah.
I would just say to avoid conflict of interest. That was the main reason behind that, and also, let me see what else. Leanna, can you chime in on this because it was to avoid conflict of interest?
Yes, just really quickly. So usually the your attorney represents the city, the county, and their best interest. If the auditor and the board are making recommendations that may, conflict with or the legal advice that the attorney's office may be giving to the law enforcement agency, it could create a conflict of interest. So the way it's presented is not in the day-to-day operational stuff, but should there be a particular incident or a particular complaint or particular recommendation that could conflict with the advice that the attorney's office has already given, either, the mayor and commission or the police department, that they should have the ability to have an outside attorney to represent them. Not represent them, but represent the interest and the recommendations that they're making to avoid that conflict of interest.
And if it's a budgetary thing, that's one of the reasons why we started away from the investigative model, but we still wanted to make sure that that person had access to outside legal aid or support if needed. And it's not as if you know that this is something that you would include in the recommendations, you're concerned about budgeting, you can still have a cap on how much, that person would have access to per year and what that would look like in more detail. Because we recommend the first step is to use our current attorney, the city attorney, and the county attorney. And if that doesn't work out, then the second alternative is to have access to outside legal aid. So there is more detail that can be added to that and context to where it's still able to happen, but it's just not such an expensive thing.
Okay, I appreciate all of y'all's time. That's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Edwards.
Yeah, I guess that last question kind of has me thinking. So the outside counsel would be provided to the complainant that files the complaint with the auditor. Is that correct?
No, Commissioner, if I may, the outside counsel would be providing legal guidance to any recommendations that the auditor or the board make, not the complainant. And it could be as a result of a complaint. It could be as a result of a policy recommendation or a finding that perhaps the board or the auditor disagrees with, but not to represent the complainant.
Okay. And the reason for the outside counsel recommendation is to have some degree of separation from the county attorney?
Yes, in the instance that there is a potential conflict of interest with respect to, advice that the county attorney may have given the law enforcement agency. I guess, advice about a particular policy or implementation of a policy that perhaps the oversight board is finding to be something that is creating, creating complaints or creating conflict in the way it is carried out, so that they can have their attorney representing them. It doesn't come up that often, but when it does come up, there is definitely a need to have the ability to conflict out of it with a different attorney.
Okay. And then, what were some of the what were some of the models y'all looked to, or what maybe served as a model? Where has this been done elsewhere?
We looked at, Leanna can help with this as well, but we looked at the Atlanta model. I believe there was a Madison model that we looked at, but there were several different models, but the one that we used, I can't remember the name of the city. Leanna, is it Arizona?
Yeah, one of the models that you used was actually the one I'm in Arizona, which is what we call the hybrid models, which is a combination of both. So there's the full investigative models, which are very costly because you are doing all that model. The investigative agency is actually doing that investigations. You have to hire investigators. You have to have a full complement of staff. Those are very expensive. What is becoming more common is the hybrid model, the combination of the auditor that does, as Mocha explained earlier in one of the slides, I think, when she talked about, the auditor would be doing the day-to-day work. So that's the professional staff doing the day-to-day work. And then you still have that very critical citizen component by having the board as part of the model. And of course, the board are the representation from your community and all volunteers. But this model has become more and more common across the country in all states because it still gives you that ability to have that community voice and the person doing the work on a day-to-day basis without the added costs of being a fully investigative model. Given the size of your law enforcement agency and the number of complaints, all that was taken into consideration as we started working through with the task force on the various models out there.
Okay, so if you could help me understand, let's say I was mistreated by the police. I would file a complaint and the auditor would read it, and then the auditor would present it to the board.
A complaint.
Yeah, how does it go step by step?
So a member of the community can file a complaint directly with the auditor. The auditor does not have the authority to do that investigation. That complaint will still be turned over to the police department, Internal Affairs Division, who actually conducts the investigation. Once the investigation is completed, the auditor reviews that investigation for thoroughness and was the investigation thorough, complete, fair, and then also provides a report to the board as well with respect to the number of complaints. So depending on the number of complaints that you get, you wouldn't be able to necessarily have the board look at every single complaint if they're meeting maybe once a month. So that's why it's important to have, that fully staffed, that one person that can do these day to day. The auditor would also have the authority, and I know we didn't get into this on the slides, but to monitor an ongoing investigation and when I say monitor, they can observe the interviews that the police department is conducting of witnesses, of the complainant, to ensure that, they know that, the appropriate or the extent of the questions and the thoroughness of the investigation is occurring throughout the course of the investigation itself. The auditor and the board should also have the ability to send an investigation back to the police department if they did not feel that the investigation was thorough and complete.
Okay, thanks.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Edwards. And I think again, thank Ms. Johnson and Mr. Sims and the board members and Mr. Mako for being here and making this presentation. And I think what we'll do now is discuss amongst the committee members and management about Commissioner Lane, did you have?
I have one more quick question about the recommendation that, and this is something that we've gotten inquiries about, that none of the board members have any experience with policing. One of those, I can certainly understand that none of them should have current associations with the police force, but can you explain that? There was a list of criteria that indicated that they shouldn't have any prior law enforcement experience.
This is all because, okay, and I'm gonna let Leanna chime in, basically on other models that we saw out there, but we can't forget that the auditor monitor and this review board is already working in connection with the police department. They are not separate in the sense of, they still have to work with the police department in some way, shape, or form through the monitoring of an investigation, through communication with different cases. So to have a strong independence and to avoid any conflict of interest, we just recommend, and according to other places and other cities as well, it's found that it's better to not have someone with a law enforcement background. Now look at the duality of this. So we have a review board and we might have maybe 2 law enforcement professionals or personnels with past backgrounds, whatever the case may be. In addition to this review board and this auditor monitor is still having to work on some level with the police department. That can cause conflicts of interest. So we want to give the community an opportunity to have independence and separation in some way, even though we still have to work with and build a relationship with the police department.
Right, and Commissioner Link, if I may, again, it will be the job of the auditor monitor and the board to become familiar with the processes that the police department follows in their internal investigation. So it will be up to the police department to teach that this is the process that we follow. And then again, we did discuss having someone that may have prior law enforcement experience sitting as an advisory in an advisory capacity to the board versus being a voting member. So it wasn't to completely exclude it, but again, we're trying to address distrust, build trust. So any appearance of conflict, anything that could possibly hinder this process, we try to deal with it in the discussions. And so they would not be excluded from the process altogether. However, as a voting member, this would be consisted of community members.
Commissioner Hamby, I'm not sure if I'm going to have an opportunity to speak or not this afternoon, but I would say that I completely disagree with that line of thinking and would like an opportunity to, share my thoughts with respect to the leaving of law enforcement and other entities off of this board, where I don't believe it would be considered fair and impartial by the greater community without those entities on it.
Okay. Certainly we'll have that opportunity. And what I was going to do now, if we could, is to thank Ms. Johnson, Mr. Sims, and the NACO representatives for their time here today. And I would like for us, and Josh, this is where your pen and pad are going to come in handy, is to develop some next steps about what this committee needs to look at. Certainly, I think some of the next steps ought to be looking at some of the model cities that we have presented before us, but also maybe having a matrix put together of perhaps cities that are same size or college towns that go through the same sort of scenarios that we go through. And I know, Chief, you sent me earlier today some stuff from Mecklenburg, I believe it is, and Charlotte. Is it Charlotte's?
Mecklenburg County, North Carolina.
I can't say the name right, Ken. I'm sorry about that, but we'll forward those along to the other committee members as well. And Chief, I know certainly you'll be part of this process as we figure out how to move forward. And I also want Ms. Johnson and Mr. Sims to know too that we're going to take your recommendations to heart and take them very seriously. And we may have further questions as we move through this process on the Government Operations Committee. So from that standpoint, so the way I see it, we need some sort of matrix about what other towns our size are doing, and a matrix involving also what they've laid out for us here. Chief, if you do have if you do want to weigh in on what you wanted to weigh in on there, I know you gave a great presentation the other night on Wednesday about what our law enforcement is doing, and I understand we are going to have more questions about the composition and makeup of the committee to make sure it's addressing the mayor's 7 questions there. So I do want to point out Patrick Davenport's on the phone. I also want to point out that the mayor texted me. He wanted to join us on WebEx, wasn't able to get on. I guess having technical difficulties, but he is watching on YouTube. So he's one of our viewers. So. Okay, committee members, do y'all have anything that you would like to add to Josh's list beyond what I had? And I see Chief Sproul's hands up. So Chief Sproul, if you want to take a moment to respond to whatever you'd like to say. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And so I thought the presentation was well done. I don't have time to say all of the comments that I wanted to bring forward and thought I was going to have an opportunity to bring forward this afternoon. What I will say is from the start that I am a strong advocate for citizen advisory boards. I think they increase communication, increase transparency, increase understanding, and help to build trust and transparency. However, for the last 9 months, that is not what I've seen with respect to the developmental task force and what we were doing in the last 9 months. In fact, they were going quite a bit away from the initial charge, which was what the mayor asked them to do, answer specific questions. And I saw an adversarial relationship where anyone who wanted to advocate for a fair and impartial board was disrespected and basically forced off of that task force. Even in instances where I wanted to bring forward concerns or thoughts or ideas that were contrary to what they were going, or to try to look for impartiality, I was disrespected, and in one case was disinvited from the next meeting. I don't see how a board or a board that is built of people who have past criminal history records, substance abuse, mental illness, and negative encounters with the police are welcomed on that board. And in fact, it's mandated that they be on that board. Yet people who are involved with the faith ministry, business owners, past law enforcement, or just regular law-abiding citizens are not welcomed on the committee. Despite what I've heard them say tonight, during these meetings, what I've seen is a strong bias against the police, adversarial relationship, a focus on seizing power and control away from the police department and even away from the manager in an effort to run the police department. And even up to the January meeting, while they are saying that they were against defunding the police, I've seen where they're still talking about taking money out of the police department's budget to do certain things where there's money available at other places, could be made available at other places, where the focus is on no, but we got to take it from the police department. I see where there's a blame game where I'm offended by some of the things that happened. On January the 6th, my fiance was among the people who went to the nation's capital to try to prevent the insurrection that took place. At the January meeting, one of these board members from the task force had the audacity to suggest that the police were responsible for that insurrection. I think that's appalling. I felt disrespected. I felt no voice throughout it. I support a citizens advisory board and that concept, but there's no way that in good conscience I can support any recommendation that comes out of the developmental task force.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. And I want to assure everybody here, the Chief and the task force members, that what the Government Operations Committee is going to do is to focus on the 7 questions that the mayor laid out in his task force, and we're going to do it in a way that's fair, that's methodical, and that looks at what we can do as a community to both to support the police department and to make sure that people know that they're being treated fairly in our community, going through our court system and our police department and such as that. So So that's the approach that I hope we're going to take as a committee and as committee members, and certainly everybody's input is going to be taken into strong consideration, and we're going to give everybody the respect that everybody is due in this community. I will ask before we move on. It is 6:05, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and do appreciate everybody's thoughts and opinions here. And I appreciate the fact that we can have a candid discussion about this. I think that's helpful, and I think it's helpful to hear everybody's opinions. So, I've asked that Josh, can you tell me what's on your list so far? And I know we're going to have some questions for the attorney's office from that standpoint, and I know the chief is going to have some examples that he may provide for us as well from advisory boards that he may have encountered in the past, and we certainly have the list from the recommendation task force. So Josh, can you tell us what you've got on your list so far, and other members may want to weigh in on some additional items? Yes,
Commissioner Hamby, I heard you mention model cities, developing a matrix that includes communities like Athens-Clarke County and what they're currently utilizing in terms of models, and working with the task force to make sure we have all the examples they looked at as well, and bring that back in terms of a matrix for the full GOC. That's what I've heard so far. Okay, and within that matrix also, can you put whatever sort of budgetary expenses those examples incur, if you could provide that as well, so that we have a rough idea as budgets coming up what we might need to anticipate. Commissioners, did y'all have any? I mean, I think that's a good start for us. Unless y'all may have some other suggestions about what we need to look at in order to address these 7 questions, but looking at that, I think is going to help us address some of these 7 questions about models and such as that. Commissioners, Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamby. I'd say the one thing I think we definitely need to add to that list, we're going to be doing that research, is that we do have access to these experts from NACOL who have been working with oversight, across the entire country, and have connections with international ones and everything too. So I think that absolutely needs to be, paramount when we're doing this research, is to lean on them as those experts.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Denson. I want to mention Commissioner Davenport's here, and I don't know if Commissioner he did join us. So
yes. Just to piggyback off of Commissioner Denson, I do respect NACO, but I would like to get other opinions as well from other experts. And I would love to speak to Liana Perez individually, as well as Mocha and Shane, and of course Sherry Hines, who's been involved, I believe, throughout this process, just to get feedback, just to get a more in-depth analysis of the recommendations and train of thoughts, and to get to know the individual a little bit better. But definitely, I'm not too familiar with these national organizations, but maybe someone who may have a different opinion or view. Okay, thank you, Commissioner. And I see Ms. Johnson has a question.
I just wanted to say I would recommend that the Government Operations Committee and different members go back and watch some of these videos as well. It was some antagonistic relationships on this board. And even though Chief Spruill might have felt disrespected, there was board members that also left because they were uncomfortable and they felt the same power grab that he's referring to. They felt as if the mayor, not the mayor, but the manager and Chief Spruill was going for a power grab and would not create space for citizens' voices a part of that board. So some people left. We fought to keep that board together, for everyone's voice to be heard. And we made an effort, not just based on the different conflict that occurred on the board, but there's community members that took time to fill out these surveys from the beginning all the way up to recently. So this is not just about one person. This is about the entire group and the community that have spent their time doing those surveys. And if Shane and I could sit on that board and go through all those different obstacles, then I would recommend that the mayor and commission also, Nicole was a great resource. They have a lot of information about other cities that were out there. We looked at various models, and I recommend that you go back and look at the members, and you talk to all the different members that were a part of this board.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And I'll remind the board that Assistant Manager Edwards did send us a link to the to all of the meetings, so there should be in your email. And Josh, would you mind resending that to us just so it gets to the top of the list?
Will do.
Well, and Josh, I think we've given you a good list to start from for our next meeting, and I know we'll chat. And commissioners, if you have any additional thoughts, if you want to send them to me, I'll be glad to get them on the list, and we'll work through this in a way that's going to benefit this community. So we're going to work to be something good for Athens, and something that's fair, and that people, everybody will be glad to see it happen. So unless there's any further business, I'm going to go ahead and accept a recommendation to adjourn if y'all are ready.
So moved.
Thank you, Patrick. Can I get a second there?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Link. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody, for your time.
Right.
Jane and Chief Sproul, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.